Dog waited 8 years, and what happened next will leave you in tears. The old train station at Maplewood had long been a forgotten corner of the town, its once bustling platforms now home to little more than the occasional commuter and the steady hum of passing trains. The faded paint on the station walls and the rusted benches spoke of a time when the place had been alive with movement and stories. But for the past 8 years, one figure had remained constant amid the slow decay. A dog. A scruffy, medium-sized mutt with a coat the color of autumn leaves. He was a quiet presence on the platform. The townspeople called him Max. No one knew exactly where he came from or why he was there. But every day, rain or shine, Max would sit near the edge of the platform, his gaze fixed on the tracks as though he were waiting for something or someone. At first, people assumed he was a stray, scavenging for scraps and seeking shelter. But Max never begged for food, nor did he follow anyone home. He accepted the occasional kindness, a piece of bread from the baker, a bowl of water left by a kind-hearted station worker, but he never strayed from his post. As the years passed, Max became a fixture of the station, his story whispered among the townspeople. Children pointed him out to their parents, travelers snapped pictures of him, and even the station master, a gruff man named Bill, found himself growing attached to the quiet, watchful dog. "You're loyal, I'll give you that," Bill would say, tossing Max a biscuit as he passed by. "But who are you waiting for, boy?" Max never responded, of course. He simply waited. One chilly autumn morning, as the leaves turned golden and the air carried the first whispers of winter, a young journalist named Clara arrived at the station. She was new to Maplewood, having moved from the city a few weeks earlier, and had heard whispers of the dog who never left the platform. Curious, Clara approached the station master. "Is it true?" she asked. "Has that dog really been waiting here for 8 years?" Bill nodded, his expression softening. "Sure has. Never seen anything like it. Showed up one day out of the blue and hasn't left since." "Do you know who he's waiting for?" Clara asked. Bill shook his head. "No one does. But if you ask me, it's someone he loved. Dogs don't wait like that unless their heart's in it." Clara's interest was piqued. She decided to dig deeper, hoping to uncover the story behind Max's vigil. Over the next few days, she interviewed the townspeople, piecing together fragments of information about the dog who had become a local legend. The first breakthrough came from an elderly woman named Mrs. Hargrove, who lived near the station. "I remember the day he arrived," she said, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "It was late spring, and he looked so lost. He wandered around for a bit, sniffing everything, and then he just sat down on that platform and started watching the tracks. Did anyone ever try to take him in?" Clara asked. "Plenty of people," Mrs. Hargrove replied, "myself included, but he wouldn't have it. He'd stay a night or two, maybe, but he always found his way back to the station." Clara jotted down notes, her curiosity growing with each new detail. She spoke to a train conductor who often passed through Maplewood, a group of schoolchildren who had made it their mission to keep Max fed, and a florist who left him fresh water every morning. Each person had a piece of the puzzle, but none could answer the one question that burned in Clara's mind. Who was Max waiting for? Then, one evening, Clara found a clue. As she sifted through old records and newspaper clippings at the town library, she stumbled upon a photograph. It showed a man standing on the platform at Maplewood Station, his suitcase at his feet and a dog, a younger, brighter-eyed version of Max, sitting loyally by his side. The caption read, "John Archer departs Maplewood for a new life in the city." April 2015. Clara's heart raced. This was it, the beginning of Max's story. She quickly scanned the accompanying article, which explained that John Archer, a beloved local teacher, had left Maplewood 8 years earlier to take a job in another city. He had been a quiet man, well-liked but private, and the dog in the photo was described as his constant companion. But there was no mention of what had happened to John after he left, or why Max had returned to the station without him. Clara shared her discovery with Bill the next morning, showing him the photograph. The station master squinted at it, his brow furrowing. "That's him, all right," he said, glancing at Max, who was sitting in his usual spot on the platform. "But what happened to Archer?" "I don't know yet," Clara admitted. "But I'm going to find out." Determined to uncover the truth, Clara began searching for any trace of John Archer. She combed through public records, called city offices, and even reached out to local teachers who might have worked with him. Days turned into weeks, and just when she was beginning to lose hope, she received an email from a man who claimed to have been John's neighbor. The email was brief but filled with heartbreak. John Archer had passed away 8 years ago, just a few months after leaving Maplewood. A car accident had claimed his life, leaving no family behind to mourn him, except, it seemed, for one devoted dog. Clara sat back in her chair, her heart heavy. Max had been waiting all this time for someone who would never return. The weight of his loyalty, his unyielding hope, brought tears to her eyes. The news of John Archer's death weighed heavily on Clara. She couldn't stop thinking about Max, sitting on the platform day after day, his gaze fixed on the tracks as though he still expected his beloved owner to step off a train. The thought of his unwavering hope broke her heart, but it also fueled her determination to find a way to honor his loyalty. Clara returned to the station the next morning, her steps slow and deliberate as she approached Bill, who was feeding Max a biscuit. "I found out what happened to John Archer," she said softly. Bill's expression darkened. "What is it?" Clara explained what she had learned, her voice trembling as she recounted the tragic accident that had claimed John's life. Bill shook his head, his gaze drifting to Max. "Poor boy," he murmured. "He's been waiting all these years for someone who'll never come back." Clara knelt beside Max, her hand resting gently on his fur. "I don't know how to make him understand," she said, tears brimming in her eyes. "How do you explain to a dog that the person they love is gone?" That evening, Clara sat at her desk, staring at the photo of John and Max on the station platform. An idea began to form in her mind, a way to honor Max's loyalty while giving the townspeople a chance to show him the love and appreciation he deserved. She decided to organize a memorial for John Archer and Max. It would be a way to acknowledge their bond and the years Max had spent keeping vigil at the station. Clara shared her idea with Bill, who immediately offered his support. "We'll hold it here at the station," he said. "Where else could it be?" Word spread quickly, and soon the entire town was involved. The florist offered to create a wreath for the platform, the baker promised to provide refreshments, and the school children began making posters and drawings of Max to display during the event. The day of the memorial arrived on a crisp, sunny morning. The platform was decorated with flowers, candles, and photographs of John and Max. Dozens of people gathered, many of them holding their own dogs on leashes, creating a sense of unity and love that filled the air. Clara stood at the front of the crowd, her heart pounding as she prepared to speak. Max sat beside her, his gaze calm and steady as though he understood the significance of the moment. "Today, we honor a bond that has touched all of our hearts," Clara began, her voice carrying across the platform. "John Archer was a man who left an impact on everyone he met. But perhaps no one loved him as deeply or as loyally as Mac." She paused, her throat tightening. "For 8 years, Max has waited here, never giving up hope that John would return. His loyalty reminds us of the kind of love that transcends time, loss, and distance." The crowd murmured in agreement, many wiping away tears as they looked at Max. "While John may be gone, his memory lives on," Clara continued. "And Max has ensured that none of us will ever forget the bond they shared." As Clara stepped back, Bill placed a hand on her shoulder. "That was beautiful," he said. "And I think Max knows it, too." The crowd dispersed slowly, many people stopping to pet Max or leave flowers on the platform. Clara stayed behind, watching as the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting the station in a warm, golden light. Max lay down near the edge of the platform, his head resting on his paws. For the first time, he seemed at peace, as though he had finally found a sense of closure. But that night, something unexpected happened. When Clara returned to the station to check on Max, he was gone. Panicked, she searched the area, calling his name and shining her flashlight into the shadows. She found him at the edge of the woods near the station, standing still and looking toward the horizon. When Clara approached, she realized he was staring at the tracks, his body tense but calm. It was as though he was saying goodbye, not just to the station, but to the years he had spent waiting. "Max," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "It's okay. You don't have to wait anymore." Max turned to her, his eyes filled with a quiet understanding. He stepped closer, nuzzling her hand before lying down beside her. Clara stayed with him for hours, the two of them watching the tracks in silence as the stars filled the sky. The next morning, Clara returned to the station alone. She found Max in his usual spot on the platform, his body still and serene. He had passed away in the night, his vigil finally complete. Tears streamed down Clara's face as she knelt beside him, her hand trembling as she stroked his fur. She knew, in her heart, that Max had waited until he was ready, until he felt that John's memory was safe, and his love had been honored. In the days that followed, the townspeople came together to create a permanent memorial for Max. A statue of him was placed on the platform, his gaze forever fixed on the tracks, alongside a plaque that read, "In loving memory of Max, the dog who waited," a symbol of loyalty, love, and the bonds that never break. The memorial became a place of reflection and inspiration, a reminder of the incredible devotion that had touched so many lives. And though Max was gone, his story lived on, a testament to the enduring power of love. The statue of Max became more than just a tribute. It became a symbol of hope, resilience, and loyalty. Visitors to Maplewood Station would stop to read the inscription, often moved by the story of a dog who waited for 8 years, unwavering in his love. Some would leave flowers, small notes, or even toys at the base of the statue, as though they wanted to honor not just Max, but the spirit of unconditional devotion he represented. For Clara, Max's story had been life-changing. She found herself reflecting often on the lesson he had taught her. That love, even in the face of loss, could endure in ways that went beyond comprehension. The memory of sitting with Max on his last night stayed with her, a bittersweet reminder of the profound bond he had shared with John. As the weeks turned into months, Clara continued to visit the station, her connection to Max's legacy deepening. She often brought her laptop, writing articles and essays about loyalty, hope, and the extraordinary ways animals touched human lives. Her work gained recognition, with her story about Max going viral, drawing readers from all over the world who were captivated by his enduring love. Emails poured in, messages from people who had been inspired by Max's story to reconnect with loved ones, adopt animals, or simply cherish the bonds they already had. Clara realized that Max's impact extended far beyond Maplewood. His story was a reminder that love could transcend time and even loss, leaving a mark that was both indelible and healing. One day, as Clara was working at the station, a young boy approached her. He couldn't have been older than 10, and he held a small, worn leash in his hands. "Are you the lady who wrote about Max?" he asked shyly. Clara smiled, nodding. "I am. Did you know Max?" The boy shook his head. "No, but my dog, Buddy, passed away last year. When I read about Max, it made me think of him. My mom said it's okay to miss him, but Max made me feel like Buddy is still with me, even though I can't see him anymore." Clara felt a lump in her throat as she crouched to meet the boy's eyes. "That's a very wise thing to feel," she said gently. "The ones we love are always with us, in our hearts and memories. Max would be very proud that you're remembering Buddy that way." The boy nodded, a small smile breaking through his sadness. "Thanks," he said, leaving the leash at the base of Max's statue before running off to join his mother. Clara watched him go, her heart full. Moments like these reminded her why Max's story mattered so much. It wasn't just about a dog waiting for his owner. It was about love that refused to fade, even when the world said it should. As the seasons changed, so did Maplewood Station. New flowers bloomed around Max's statue in spring, while falling leaves framed it in hues of amber and gold during autumn. In winter, children made snow dogs at its base, and in summer, tourists and locals alike took photos, sharing Max's story with anyone who would listen. One evening, on the anniversary of Max's passing, Clara organized a small gathering at the station. The townspeople lit candles and shared their own stories of loyalty and love, many of which had been inspired by Max. The atmosphere was warm, filled with laughter and tears, as people came together to celebrate a dog who had changed their lives. As Clara spoke to the crowd, she looked at Max's statue and felt a deep sense of peace. "Max taught us that love is never wasted," she said, her voice steady. "Even when it seems like the one we love is gone, the impact they've had on us remains. It shapes who we are, how we love, and how we live." The crowd nodded in agreement, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the candles. Clara knew that Max's legacy was safe, not just in the statue, but in the hearts of everyone who had been touched by his story. When the gathering ended, Clara lingered at the platform, watching as the last train of the evening rumbled past. The station was quiet again, the way it had always been when Max sat waiting. She placed a small bouquet of wildflowers at the base of the statue and whispered, "Thank you, Max, for everything." The night air was cool, and as Clara turned to leave, she felt a gentle breeze brush past her. It was subtle, but she couldn't help but feel it was Max. His spirit lingering just long enough to let her know that he was at peace, and that his love, like the stories he left behind, would endure forever. As the years passed, the statue of Max became more than just a local landmark. It attracted visitors from far and wide, drawn by the poignant tale of the dog who waited. People traveled to Maplewood Station to sit by the statue, leaving tokens of their own love stories. A leash, a collar, a photo of a beloved pet. The platform became a place of quiet reflection, a sanctuary for those seeking solace in the unwavering loyalty Max had shown. For Clara, Max's story remained at the center of her life. Inspired by the way his tale had touched so many, she decided to write a book about him. It wasn't just about Max, though. It was about the lessons he had taught her and the countless people who had been moved by his journey. She titled the book Waiting for Forever, the story of Max and the power of love. The writing process was both cathartic and challenging. Clara revisited every detail of Max's life, from the photograph of him with John Archer to the quiet moments they had shared on the platform. She interviewed the townspeople, capturing their memories and perspectives, and even incorporated letters and emails from readers around the world who had been inspired by Max's story. When the book was published, it became an instant bestseller. Readers were captivated by the story of a dog whose devotion transcended time and loss, and Clara received an outpouring of gratitude from people who felt Max's tale had helped them through their own struggles with grief and love. One day, Clara received an invitation to speak at a conference about the impact of animals on human lives. The event, held in a bustling city far from Maplewood, was attended by veterinarians, animal behaviorists, and people who worked in rescue and advocacy. Clara was nervous about sharing her story on such a large stage, but she knew it was an opportunity to honor Max's legacy. Standing in front of the crowd, Clara took a deep breath and began. She spoke about the day she first saw Max at the station, his quiet presence both mysterious and profound. She described her journey to uncover his story, the heartbreaking discovery of John Archer's fate, and the way Max had taught her, and the entire town, what it meant to love without limits. "Max waited because love doesn't end when someone leaves," Clara said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her chest. "He waited because love, at its core, is about being there through joy, through sorrow, through everything. Max reminded us all that love is worth holding on to, no matter how long the wait." The audience gave her a standing ovation, many wiping away tears. Clara felt a wave of relief and pride, knowing that Max's story was continuing to inspire people far beyond the quiet town of Maplewood. Back at home, Clara returned to her routine of visiting the station. Though the statue of Max had become a global symbol, to her it was still a deeply personal reminder of the dog who had changed her life. She often sat on the bench beside the statue, her hand resting on its cool surface as she watched the trains come and go. One evening, as she sat in the fading light, a young couple approached the statue. They held hands, their faces filled with quiet emotion as they read the plaque at its base. The man knelt down, placing a small collar on the ground. A tribute, Clara realized, to a pet they had lost. She approached them gently, offering a kind smile. "Max's story brings a lot of people here," she said softly. The woman nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. We lost our dog Bailey last year. It's been so hard, but coming here, it feels like we're not alone. You're not, Clara said, her voice warm. Max taught us that the love we share with our animals never truly fades. It stays with us, shaping who we are. The couple thanked her, and as they walked away, Clara felt a sense of fulfillment. Max's legacy wasn't just about his own loyalty. It was about the way his story continued to connect people, offering comfort and hope to those who needed it most. As Clara walked home that night, the stars bright above her, she thought about how far Max's story had come. What had started as one dog's quiet vigil on a train platform had grown into a global movement, a testament to the power of love and loyalty. And though Max was gone, his spirit lived on, not just in the statue or the book, but in the hearts of everyone who had been touched by his story. Clara looked up at the sky, a soft smile on her lips. You're still here, Max, she whispered, and you always will be. The wind stirred gently around her, carrying with it a sense of peace. And as she walked through the quiet streets of Maplewood, Clara knew that Max's love, like the tracks that stretched endlessly from the station, would go on forever. As the months went by, Clara's life intertwined more deeply with the legacy of Max. The bench at Maplewood Station became her favorite place to think, to write, and to connect with others who visited to pay tribute to Max's loyalty. The station, once a quiet and forgotten corner of the town, was now a place of reflection, drawing visitors from across the world. Clara noticed how people came with their own stories of love and loss, often leaving tokens at Max's statue. Small gestures of remembrance that carried profound meaning. She began collecting these stories, jotting them down in a journal she kept in her bag. Each entry was a window into the lives Max had touched, a mosaic of emotions and connections that honored the enduring power of his story. One day, as Clara was sitting at the bench, a man approached her. He was older, his hair silver and his steps measured, but his eyes were bright with curiosity. He carried a leather bag slung over his shoulder, and in his hands was a book, a copy of Clara's Waiting for Forever. "Excuse me," he said, his voice warm. "Are you Clara?" Clara looked up, surprised. "Yes, I am." The man smiled, holding up the book. "Your story about Max. It brought me here. My name's Richard. I had a dog like Max once. Her name was Bella." Clara gestured for him to sit, and he joined her on the bench. Over the next hour, Richard shared his story, a tale of a golden retriever who had been his constant companion during his years as a long-distance truck driver. When Bella passed away, Richard had felt an ache he couldn't quite put into words. "Reading about Max made me realize something," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. "Bella might be gone, but the love we shared, it's still with me. It's in the way I think, the way I care for others. She's a part of who I am." Clara nodded, her heart swelling. "That's exactly what Max taught me. Love doesn't end, it just changes shape." As Richard stood to leave, he placed a small photograph at the base of Max's statue. It was a picture of Bella, her golden fur glowing in the sunlight. "Thank you," he said softly, "for sharing Max's story. It's given me a way to remember Bella." Clara watched him walk away, her chest filled with a mix of sadness and gratitude. Max's story had become a bridge, connecting people to their own memories, their own love stories. As time went on, Clara's journal grew thicker, filled with the stories of those who had visited Maplewood Station. A woman who had lost her childhood dog to illness. A young couple who adopted a stray inspired by Max's loyalty. A grieving father who said the statue helped him remember the unconditional love of his Labrador, who had passed away years earlier. Each story was a testament to the way Max's legacy lived on. Clara decided to compile them into a second book, a collection of letters and reflections titled The Love That Waits, Stories Inspired by Max. The book was dedicated to everyone who had been touched by Max's story, a celebration of the connections that shaped lives and healed hearts. One day, as Clara walked through the station, she noticed something unusual. A group of children had gathered around Max's statue, their laughter and chatter filling the air. One of the children, a boy no older than 8, was holding a small puppy in his arms. "Is this the dog who waited?" he asked Clara, his wide eyes filled with wonder. Clara knelt down to his level, smiling. "Yes, this is Max. He waited here for someone he loved very much." The boy looked at the statue, then at his puppy. "I hope my dog will love me that much." "He already does," Clara said gently. "And if you love him just as much, you'll always have a special bond." The boy grinned, hugging his puppy tightly. As the children ran off, Clara felt a familiar warmth spread through her. Max's story was reaching a new generation, planting seeds of compassion and connection that would grow for years to come. On the anniversary of Max's passing, the town held a special ceremony at the station. People gathered with their pets, sharing stories, lighting candles, and leaving tributes at the statue. Clara stood at the front, her voice steady as she spoke about Max's enduring legacy. "Max reminded us all that love is worth waiting for," she said. "His story is not just about loyalty. It's about hope, about the bonds that connect us to one another. And it's a reminder that the love we give and receive lives on, even after we're gone." As Clara looked out at the crowd, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. Max's story had begun with quiet waiting, but it had grown into something far greater, a testament to the power of love to transform lives, to heal wounds, and to bring people together. When the ceremony ended, Clara sat alone at the bench, the evening light casting a golden glow over the platform. She placed her hand on the statue's base, her voice soft as she whispered, "You did it, Max. You've touched the world." The wind stirred gently, rustling the leaves around her. And though the platform was quiet once more, Clara knew Max's presence would always be there, waiting, watching, and reminding everyone who passed by that love, in its purest form, never truly fades. The years passed, but Max's memory remained an enduring part of Maplewood's heart. His statue became a cherished destination, not just for the townspeople, but for visitors from across the country. Clara continued her work, both as a writer and as a quiet guardian of Max's legacy, ensuring that his story continued to inspire those who needed it most. One spring morning, as Clara sat by the bench, she noticed a man lingering near the statue. He was middle-aged, dressed in a worn leather jacket, and carried a small box in his hands. His face was solemn, his eyes fixed on the inscription at the base of the statue. Clara approached him gently. "Hi there," she said softly. "Did you know Max?" The man looked up, startled, and then shook his head. "No, but I feel like I do." He opened the box, revealing a faded collar and a small, framed photograph of a golden retriever. This was Daisy. She was my best friend. Clara sat beside him on the bench, her heart already aching for the story she knew was coming. The man sighed, his hands trembling slightly as he held the photo. "I lost her 5 years ago. Cancer. I thought I'd never get over it. But then I read about Max. His story. It reminded me that Daisy's love didn't just end when she was gone. It's still here, in the way I live my life." Clara nodded, her throat tightening. Max had that effect on people. He showed us that love doesn't fade. It just takes a different form. The man placed the collar and photo at the base of the statue, his expression a mixture of sadness and gratitude. "I just wanted to say thank you, to Max, to you, to this town, for giving people like me a place to remember." Clara watched as he walked away, her chest heavy with emotion. These moments, these quiet, unspoken connections, were what made Max's story so powerful. It wasn't just about a dog who waited. It was about the love he represented, a love that resonated with everyone who heard his tale. Clara's second book, The Love That Waits, became a sensation. It wasn't just a collection of stories, it was a celebration of the bonds between humans and their animal companions. The book featured letters, photographs, and testimonials from people all over the world who had found comfort in Max's story. Some had adopted pets in his honor, while others had found closure for losses they'd carried for years. One letter stood out to Clara, a handwritten note from a woman in Japan. The letter, carefully penned in delicate script, told the story of a dog named Hachi, who had waited for his owner at a train station for 9 years after the man's death. The woman wrote, "When I read about Max, I thought of Hachi. They share the same spirit, a love so strong it transcends time. It reminds us that love is universal. No matter where we are in the world." Clara kept the letter on her desk, a constant reminder that Max's story had connected her to something far greater than herself. His legacy wasn't just a part of Maplewood, it was a part of the world. One evening, Clara found herself back at the bench, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and pink. She often came here to think, to write, or simply to sit in silence. But tonight felt different, quieter, heavier. As she sat, she noticed a young girl approaching the statue, clutching a stuffed animal in her arms. The girl couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, her face solemn as she placed the toy at the base of the statue. Clara waited a moment before speaking. "Hi there. Did you come to visit Max?" The girl nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "My dog, Coco, passed away. My mom said it's okay to miss her, but sometimes it hurts too much." Clara's heart ached as she knelt beside the girl. "I know that feeling," she said softly. "But you know what? Coco's love is still with you. It's in all the happy memories you shared." The girl looked up at Clara, her eyes filled with tears. "Do you think Max and Coco are friends now?" Clara smiled, her own tears threatening to fall. "I think they are, and I think they're both watching over us, making sure we never forget how much they loved us." The girl hugged Clara tightly before running back to her parents, leaving the stuffed animal as a tribute. Clara sat back on the bench, her thoughts swirling. It was moments like these that reminded her why Max's story mattered so much. It gave people a place to feel, to grieve, and to heal. In the years that followed, Clara continued her work, dedicating herself to sharing stories of love and loyalty inspired by Max. The station remained a beacon of hope, its quiet platform a sanctuary for those seeking comfort. And though the trains came and went, the statue of Max stood still, his gaze fixed on the tracks, a silent reminder of the love that never left. Clara often wondered what Max would think of all this. The statue, the books, the visitors who came from far and wide. But in her heart, she knew the answer. Max hadn't waited for recognition or fame. He had waited out of love, pure and simple. And that love, even in its quietest moments, had changed the world. As Clara stood beneath the stars one evening, her hand resting on the base of the statue, she whispered, "Thank you, Max, for teaching us how to love." The breeze stirred around her, carrying her words into the night. And though the platform was silent, Clara felt a presence. A warmth that told her Max's spirit was still there, waiting, watching, and reminding the world that love, in all its forms, was always worth the wait. One stormy night, as lightning illuminated the sky and thunder echoed through the valley, Clara found herself unable to sleep. She sat at her desk, staring at the glowing screen of her laptop, but the words wouldn't come. Her thoughts kept drifting to the station, to Max's statue, and to the countless people who had found solace in his story. Something about the storm unsettled her, as though it were a harbinger of something yet to come. The rain battered against the windows, the sound steady and relentless. Clara's mind wandered back to the first time she had seen Max, sitting quietly on the platform, his gaze fixed on the tracks. Even then, there had been something unshakable about him, a strength and resolve that seemed otherworldly. Unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong, Clara grabbed her coat and umbrella and stepped out into the night. The streets were empty, the town cloaked in darkness save for the occasional flash of lightning. She hurried toward the station, her heart pounding with a mix of urgency and dread. When she arrived, the station was eerily quiet. The storm had knocked out the power, leaving the platform shrouded in shadows. Clara's breath caught as her flashlight beam swept over the familiar sight of Max's statue, rain glistening on its surface. But something was different. At the base of the statue lay a bundle of fresh flowers, soaked through but carefully arranged. Clara frowned. She hadn't seen anyone on her way to the station, and the flowers hadn't been there earlier that day. Who could have left them, and why in the middle of a storm? As she stepped closer, a movement in the shadows caught her attention. Her flashlight flicked toward the source, and she froze. A dog, a living, breathing dog, stood just beyond the platform. It was thin and trembling, its coat matted with mud and rain. Its eyes, wide and bright, seemed to plead for something Clara couldn't yet understand. "Hey there," Clara called softly, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The dog didn't move, its gaze darting between Clara and the statue. Lightning flashed again, illuminating its frail form. It let out a low whine, then took a cautious step toward her, its movements hesitant and deliberate. Clara crouched, holding out her hand. "It's all right," she murmured. "You're safe here." The dog approached slowly, its tail wagging faintly despite its evident fear. When it reached her, it collapsed at her feet, its body shivering. Clara wrapped her coat around it, shielding it from the rain as she gently stroked its fur. As the storm raged on, Clara carried the dog to the station's waiting room, which offered some shelter from the elements. She dried it off as best she could, her hands trembling as she examined its thin frame. It was malnourished, its ribs visible beneath its dirty coat, but its eyes held a spark of something familiar, a quiet determination that reminded her of Max. "Where did you come from?" Clara whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "And why now?" The dog rested its head on her lap, its breathing slow but steady. Clara felt a lump form in her throat. There was something uncanny about this moment, as though it were a continuation of Max's story, a new chapter unfolding before her. The next morning, as the storm subsided and the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, Clara returned to the platform with the dog by her side. The flowers at the base of Max's statue were still there, glistening with raindrops. Clara knelt to inspect them more closely and found a note tucked among the stems. It was written in shaky handwriting. "For Max, the dog who taught us how to wait." Clara's chest tightened. Whoever had left the flowers clearly understood Max's legacy, but their identity remained a mystery. She looked at the dog, who sat quietly beside her, its gaze fixed on the statue. For a moment, it almost seemed as though the dog was paying its respects. Then something extraordinary happened. The dog stood, walked to the base of the statue, and placed its paw on the inscription. Clara's breath caught as she watched, her heart pounding. It was as though the dog knew Max's story, knew what this place meant. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "You're part of this now, aren't you?" The dog turned to her, its eyes filled with an emotion Clara couldn't quite describe. Love, gratitude, understanding, whatever it was, it filled the air around them, wrapping Clara in a warmth that defied explanation. Clara sat with the dog beneath Max's statue, the morning sunlight casting long shadows across the platform. The storm had passed, leaving the air fresh and cool, but Clara's thoughts were anything but settled. The dog's presence felt like a message, a continuation of Max's story, one she hadn't expected but now felt compelled to honor. She looked down at the dog, who lay curled at her feet, its breathing steady. "You came here for a reason," she said softly. Just like Max did, the dog lifted its head, its eyes meeting hers. There was something in its gaze, something deep and knowing, as though it carried the weight of 1,000 untold stories. Clara reached out, her hand resting gently on its head. "Maybe you're here to remind me that Max's story isn't over." Over the next few days, Clara cared for the dog, whom she decided to call Finn. His recovery was slow but steady, and as he grew stronger, his personality began to shine. He was gentle and curious, always following Clara wherever she went, his tail wagging faintly as he explored his new surroundings. Finn seemed particularly drawn to Max's statue. Each time they visited the platform, he would sit beside it, his eyes fixed on the tracks in the same way Max once had. It was as though he understood the significance of the place, as though he, too, had something to wait for. Clara found herself wondering about Finn's past. Where had he come from? Who had he loved? And why had he chosen the platform at Maplewood Station as his sanctuary? The questions lingered, unanswered but poignant, adding another layer of mystery to the story. One evening, as Clara was preparing dinner, there was a knock at her door. She opened it to find an elderly woman standing on the porch, her hands clasped tightly around a photograph. Her eyes were filled with tears, but her smile was warm. "Are you Clara?" the woman asked. Clara nodded, her curiosity piqued. "Yes. Can I help you?" The woman held out the photograph. It was a picture of Finn, his coat clean and his eyes bright, sitting beside a man on a wooden porch. "This is Finn," the woman said, her voice trembling. "He belonged to my son, Henry." Clara's breath caught as she took the photograph, her fingers brushing the edges. "Your son?" The woman nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Henry passed away 2 months ago. Finn was everything to him, but after Henry died, Finn ran off. I've been searching for him ever since. I never thought I'd find him here." Clara felt her throat tighten as she looked down at Finn, who had come to sit beside her. His eyes, so full of love and understanding, seemed to say, "I found my way back." "He's been waiting," Clara said softly, her voice breaking. "Just like Mac." The woman knelt beside Finn, wrapping her arms around him as fresh tears fell. "Thank you," she whispered to Clara. "Thank you for taking care of him. He's all I have left of Henry." In the days that followed, Clara helped the woman, whose name was Helen, reintegrate Finn into her life. Though it was clear that Finn loved Clara, his bond with Helen ran deep. He stayed by her side, offering her the same loyalty and comfort he had once given to her son. Clara visited often, her connection to Finn and Helen growing stronger with each passing day. Their shared experiences of love, loss, and the enduring presence of those who had left them created a bond that felt as unbreakable as the one Max had shared with John Archer. On the anniversary of Max's passing, the town held another gathering at the station. This time, Helen joined Clara, Finn sitting quietly between them. The platform was filled with candles, flowers, and people who had come to honor the love and loyalty Max had embodied. Clara stood at the front of the crowd, her voice steady as she spoke. "Max taught us that love doesn't end, it transforms. It lives on in the bonds we share, in the memories we carry, and in the ways we care for one another." Finn's story is proof that Max's legacy continues, reminding us all that love is always worth waiting for. The crowd applauded softly, their faces illuminated by the candlelight. As the gathering dispersed, Clara and Helen stayed behind, sitting together on the bench beneath Max's statue. The night was quiet, the stars bright above them. "Do you think Max brought Finn to you?" Helen asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Clara smiled, her heart full. "I think Max brought all of us together. His love, his loyalty. It's still here, guiding us." Helen nodded, resting her hand on Finn's head. "Then we're all part of his story now." As the years passed, Clara, Helen, and Finn remained connected by the threads of Max's legacy. The platform at Maplewood Station continued to draw visitors, its quiet presence a testament to the enduring power of love and loyalty. And though Max's waiting had ended, his spirit lived on, in the people he had touched, in the stories they shared, and in the bonds they created. One evening, as Clara sat beneath the stars, she placed her hand on Max's statue and whispered, "Thank you for teaching us what love truly means." The wind stirred gently, carrying her words into the night. And in that moment, Clara knew Max's story would never truly end. It would go on, in the hearts of those who believed in the kind of love that could wait forever.